I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the bosses of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and ranking them from worst to best. In my opinion, this is a list purely based on my first experience with the game, and it will differ from your own. If you want to see my thoughts on the dungeons of Tears of the Kingdom though, click the card in the top right corner and check that video out, cause damn, you guys like that one. I'd be an idiot not to follow it up, I got bills to pay. So, some housekeeping before we start. I'm only considering bosses with an official boss health bar for my rankings, and I won't be including the Stone Talus, the Hynoxes, or the Molduga bosses on this list, as they're straight up ripped from Breath of the Wild, and I'd like to focus on the completely new bosses. But for those curious, my ranking would go as such: Stone Talus at the bottom, then the Hynox, then Molduga, simply because there were less Molduga in Breath of the Wild, so it was easier to not get sick of them. If I have to fight another Hynox variant or a Stone Talus again, I will cry. And just to be clear, I'm not ranking any of the Monster Forces bosses, they're an entirely different concept. So without further ado, all 15 bosses in Tears of the Kingdom ranked. Share your experiences in the comments below, and beware of full spoilers for the game. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot that the Sludge-like was a boss until about 5 minutes before writing the script. A mini-boss found in the Zora questline, it attacks Mipha's court and effectively acts as your tutorial for Sidon's Sage ability. Now, during my playthrough, I found Sidon's power to be rather difficult to use. I kept wanting a bit more from it, and found myself struggling to aim the water in a way that would actually clear the sludge effectively. I imagine it would have just been easier to use a splash fruit, but that could also just be me being bad because blind playthrough and all that. Back to the boss though, the Sludge-like is fine. It's a regular enemy that got promoted and acts more like this quest's mid-boss than anything else. And that's okay, there really isn't anything else to add. It didn't really give me the best first impression of Sidon's ability though. Next up, we have a fight that had the potential to be so much greater than it was. In the Goron questline, you're forced to spar with Yonobo, dodging his rolls and making him dizzy so you can smash that mind control mask atop his head. I wish that Nintendo had gone all in on the boss fight aspect here and had it function like the rest of the game's battles with a fully fledged health bar, as instead Yonobo is freed from the mask in just 3 hits. We know that he's a capable fighter now, thanks to his abilities as a sage and his experiences from the previous game, so why not showcase that in battle? We could have had him pinballing around the room with multiple Goron rolls that you'd have to dodge out of the way of, maybe even do a flurry rush to stop him in his tracks. As it stands, it's a fight with missed potential that is fun for the brief few moments that it's on screen, but that's about it. I wouldn't complain if Nintendo games were more willing to do the hero has to fight a previous ally shtick. I love that melodrama. Before anyone gets mad, from an aesthetic perspective, I think Muktarok is a fabulous boss. Tremendously dangerous gunky shark that belies a cowardly timid Octorok beneath. It's classic goofy Zelda boss, with so much personality, and honestly could have been a Pokemon design with a few tweaks. My issue was with the battle itself. I like the concept of needing to knock the shark out of its muck state to reveal the weak body, but I had to utilize Sidon's Sage ability, and as I explained in the Sludge-like entry, I just never jived with his ability. I feel like I missed a memo somehow and just didn't understand the best way to utilize the water shield, because I always ended up undershooting my attacks and found myself getting pretty beat up as the sludge continued to pile on. It doesn't help that Sidon has a decent cooldown between uses, so if you're out of splash fruit, you're out of luck. I suspect others will have this fight higher if they had more splash fruits and a better grasp of Sidon's ability, but for me, it kinda blended together alongside my disappointment in the water temple to create a meh feeling overall. Major spoilers for the end game, the Demon Dragon is at number 12. I'm separating it from Ganondorf proper because it's an entirely new health bar, but despite its low placement, I think this sequence and this boss works perfectly for where it is in the game. It's a cinematic fight against a demonic dragon that has lost the vestiges of its human self. Ganondorf, as we know it, is gone, sacrificing everything to take us down. But the irony is that the demon dragon isn't that aggressive, and I have a theory I'll explain in a moment. You ride atop the light dragon, skydiving onto the creature of gloom and striking at its weak spots before being thrown off and forced to start again. You're unlikely to lose this fight, but it has a more dynamic edge to it than Dark Beast Ganon from Breath of the Wild, which, you know what? I prefer this new one. I just like the idea that Ganondorf, in his hubris, believed turning into a dragon would give him the power he needed, but he ultimately became this mindless creature who is clearly evil, yet somehow aimless? Almost like the malice inside of the demon dragon is fighting with that urge to just be a dragon and vibe. After all, you're supposed to lose all sense of self when you transform. That goes for both good and evil. I'm reading too much into this though. It was an amazing fight leading to an amazing finale, but the other bosses in the game challenged me on a mechanical level, and that's why I'm ranking them all higher. The Scourge of Death Mountain itself, and a wonderful Volvagia reference. We have Moragia. This draconic creature, created from the rocks leading out of the Death Mountain crater, towers over Hyrule, spewing magma rocks at Link as he approaches. This is a rare fight in Tears of the Kingdom that actively revolves around Zonai technology, as in order to stand a chance, you need to hop atop a glider and steer your way around the boss, aiming Yunobo in his cannonball form to strike the creature down. This is one of those really cool set pieces that ultimately revolves around a 3-hit structure. Once Yunobo gets a direct hit, that head is destroyed, leaving the other 2 to be tackled and a third of the health bar decimated. I feel like more boss fights needed to incorporate the Zonai tech, and while I think Moragia is genius as a fight, it's over too quickly. I was just getting into my stride and then the fight was over. I'd won, but I was expecting a rematch in the Fire Temple. But no, Moragia's taken out with the trash. I'd love to hear what you guys think, given I imagine we all had a giddy smile on our faces when we realized just what we had to do to slay this boss. On one of my first delves into the depths, I'd wandered into the chasms near Kakariko village, and as I was looking through the dark, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Something big. Something intimidating. I was terrified, but I was also curious, so I shoot some light over in that direction, and a giant Phrox towers before me. The speed in which I ran the fuck away is legendary, as I was not prepared to find something that big down in the depths, nor was I prepared for a boss fight. The underworld of Hyrule has a great way of building atmosphere, and that Phrox reveal will forever stick with me. It's a shame then that the actual fight is extremely straightforward. It acts like the Dodongos from previous Zelda games, and honestly makes me wonder why they didn't just do Dodongos instead, because they're iconic. But you have to shoot bombs into the Phrox's mouth when it inhales, causing it to explode, allowing you to jump onto its back and smash away at the weak point crystals. Rinse and repeat, bish, bash, bosh. The main challenge is avoiding the Phrox's slams as you wait for it to inhale once more, but once you've fought one of these guys, you've fought them all. Brilliant intimidation factor, but a fairly simple fight once you get past the whole being absolutely terrified part. The absolute excitement on my face when I reached the end of the Fire Temple and discovered that we weren't rematching with Moragia. Instead, we're getting the return of one of the most classic Zelda bosses of all time in another new variant. The marbled Goma appears ready to crush the competition. That's right, the Gorons have been eating Goma this whole time. I want to make it clear right away that I'm not looking for difficulty in my Zelda bosses, not most of the time. I'm looking for ingenuity. I'm looking for solutions to fights that make me smile, and using Yunobo's cannon form to smash the legs of Goma in the first phase was pure bliss. Easy, but so much fun. Then the second phase hits, and you're having to shoot Yunobo at the walls to trickshot him into the legs on the ceiling, all the while avoiding exploding rocks being launched at you by the boss. It's a nice escalation that isn't too difficult, but it's just fun, and different enough with its phase transition to be exciting. It's partly why I hope the next Zelda game doesn't shy away from a little linearity here and there, because boss fights in Zelda work the best when there's a really cool intended way to defeat them. It's like night and day comparing the Tears of the Kingdom boss lineup to Breath of the Wild, where bomb arrows were your besties. We're getting into the really good territory of bosses now, as we look at the Scourge of the Lightning Temple, Queen Gibdo. This gigantic bug serves as both a little teaser as you approach the temple, as well as the main boss of the dungeon, and I will admit I wish they hadn't done that. I'm a big fan of not knowing what the boss is going to be until you open that boss door and enter the boss arena, so having the surprise of Queen Gibdo be ruined before I've even set foot in the dungeon, not my favorite impression. For a moment, I didn't even think there'd be a temple, and that was just the boss fight and that was it. Her fight, though, is a lot of fun, utilizing Riju's Thunderstrike ability to great effect, be it striking the queen as she attempts to hilariously strafe around your attacks, to the way she'll start summoning her children once the second phase hits, and then you have to work both with avoiding the queen's attacks, especially that sand beam, and also the lesser Gibdos who are trying to maul you. The good thing is you can use the light from destroying one of the Gibdo nests to stun and make the rest of them vulnerable, giving you a safe spot from which to tackle the boss. I also did the boss rematch in the depths post-game, and even without the sunlight to stun the enemies, you can still use the same tactics from phase 1 to defeat Queen Gibdo, which I like. Her design is amazing, and I pity anyone who doesn't like bugs having to deal with this boss fight. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than activating Riju and having to keep yourself alive as her Thunder Wave expands further and further until it finally covers the target you're aiming for. Great stuff, I just prefer the other fights that little bit more. In the green corner, Link from Hyrule atop Minoru, the Sage of Spirit. In the red corner, the Scourge of the Spirit Temple, the Seized Construct. Whoever decided to put a wrestling ring in the middle of the Spirit Temple is a genius, because what a unique fight that forces Link to really engage with the new mechanics Minoru is offering. If you love the Construct content, you'll love this bout as you smack the opponent with whatever you've got laying about to knock him into that electrified barbed wire fence. This is a real cage match, and you can't dismount because of all the gloom on the floor. Giving that 1-2 punch is so satisfying and entertaining to watch, but I do wish the second phase was a little more challenging. It felt like the Construct gained new moves, but you could easily combo it back into what you were doing in phase 1 without much issue. Because Minoru moves so slowly in general without upgrades, they had to design the fight with that in mind, so it's less a wrestling match and more rock'em sock'em robots. But the unique premise is practically unmatched in this game, and actually replicated in another interesting way with a fight further on the list. I didn't see this coming at all, but what a fitting end to a dungeon that revolves around Zonai tech and the creation of a construct. It's almost like an evolution of Koloktos from Skyward Sword, and of all the fights in Tears of the Kingdom, this is going to be one of the standouts for years to come, even above some of the higher ones on my list. Atop their circular arenas high in the sky are a series of flux constructs, each growing in strength as you find them. These blocky boys are built specifically with your Zonai abilities in mind, even if I didn't personally realize that when I fought them. You see, I've seen videos, I've seen tweets, I've seen ways to take down these constructs that blew my mind, because I'm just thinking shoot an arrow at the weak spot and go nuts. What a beta mindset, Billy. Arrows? When you can be using Recall and Ultra Hand and Ascend to absolutely confuse the constructs? I love the design, I love the distinct phases that each require a different approach to solve, and I love that these enemies don't overstay their welcome. They're difficult and gain more strategies as they evolve in variation, which, in my opinion, is more appealing than the way Hinoxes or Froxes evolve between variations, which is just, new colors. And that's perhaps the most important aspect of an overworld boss for me. New moves and new techniques are where it's at. They only miss out on the top 5 just barely, but these constructs are perhaps the most underrated fight in Tears of the Kingdom. Starting off my top 5, we have the Demon King's Phantom Saboteur, Phantom Ganon, fought at Hyrule Castle. Technically, I'm also including the Overworld variant in this entry, the ones that appear after you fight off a horde of Gloom Hands. One of the scariest moments in all of Zelda when that sky turns red and suddenly you're getting groped. I first encountered Phantom Ganon on Mekar Island thinking, something has to be here in Tears of the Kingdom. I watched that one Zeltic video. And I didn't even realize Phantom Ganon had spawned until I was on death's door. Such a great moment. But it's the Throne Room Phantom Ganon boss fight that takes the cake, and makes me wish we didn't actually have those overworld bosses, because how cool would it have been to discover Phantom Ganon in his throne room without any prior knowledge? The cutscene introducing him alone is genuinely harrowing, coming fairly close to that infamous Twilight Princess Triforce cutscene. But then the fight itself is, oh boy, I hope you have the sages activated, because if you do, it's a 5v5 of epic proportions where each of you takes a phantom and your goal is to whittle them all down. If you try this 1v5, good luck to you, you're braver than I. Phantom Ganon hits hard, but his attacks are well telegraphed, so it's not like you're fighting an Elden Ring boss. His second phase, though, is where things get fun, as one of the 5 puppets will begin spewing gloom across the arena, and on top of the battle already being waged, you'll have to shoot that specific Phantom Ganon to stop the spread. The only thing that could have made this fight better is if the actual sages were with you, instead of being saved for the post-fight cutscene. But this fight alone demonstrates why Tears of the Kingdom truly is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, because in the former game, it was all down to Link. But here, you learn you're not alone in the fight, and that's shown through the gameplay and mechanics. Fantastic stuff. Just missing out on a podium finish? I fucking called it so many times on Twitter once rumors were circulating of a hidden depths layer to the overworld. I knew Master Koga would be back, and I could never have guessed that the entire Yiga clan had taken over the depths one outpost at a time. Koga is perhaps the most entertaining character in Zelda for comic relief since Groose in Skyward Sword, and his penchant for physical comedy combined with his hilariously fun boss fights against an ever-growing arsenal of Zonai vehicles left me so excited to encounter each time. From a simple tank to an aircraft, my personal favorite, the speedboat James Bond-style chase, where every time you knocked him down you'd have to steal his boat while he teleports to a new one, and then a fight styled like the Seized Construct in case you wanted another giant robot to beat up with your mech. From having easily one of the most basic boss fights in Breath of the Wild and being an absolute joke, to being a genuine threat in Tears of the Kingdom who ultimately reveals where Ganondorf's been hiding the whole game, well done, Koga. Although, it doesn't take a genius to figure out Ganondorf is under Hyrule Castle. I actually stumbled upon the final boss after beating the Wind Temple and quit out immediately. That was an experience. While not every battle of Koga's was built the same, he provided so much fun and a real questline for the depths that give the area more meaning as you explore. What I'm trying to say is, glory to Master Koga. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit here. As of recording this script, I have only killed a single Gleeok, and it's the Lake Hylia Flame Gleeok. But I've seen that King Gleeok in the Gleeok Den in the depths. I've looked at the Thunder Gleeok in the Colosseum ruins that immediately caused a thunderstorm when I got close. I've seen all the Ice Gleeoks about in the world and thought, nope, nope, nope. And I could tell from just one attempt at this new super boss variant that the Gleeoks are something special. I adore when Zelda recreates classic enemies for the modern day, and seeing Lionels get a complete upgrade in the last 2 games as an example was amazing. So seeing the Gleeoks easily get catapulted to the mainstream is so cool. From being one of the toughest bosses in Zelda 1, to its brief stint in Oracle of Seasons and Phantom Hourglass, to now being gigantic 3D dragons who can one-shot you if you're not prepared, and one-shot you even if you are. I was very lucky I had Ice Keese eyeballs to take this Gleeok down, but let me tell you, I'm really looking forward to hopping back into Tears of the Kingdom during my July-August holiday time, and really getting to sink my teeth into the rest of these fights. I want to take down that King Gleeok in the depths and feel damn good about it. I hope nobody is offended that I don't have much experience with these guys yet, but I'm a busy boy. I've got like half a month to edit 8 or 9 videos while I'm away, so this'll have to do for now. If you ask me which boss I'm going to remember for years to come from Tears of the Kingdom, I will instantly think of Colgera, Scourge of the Wind Temple. While not the most difficult fight with fairly large weak points and not that much health to speak of since it's tied towards bursting those weak spots, it makes up for it in spectacle and excitement. From the way it's a gigantic reference to the Wind Waker and Molgera, to the way you get infinite stamina to glide up and down along the winds as you soar through the air and either do what I did and use your arrows to kill the boss, or do what most people apparently did, which I got to test out on the Depths boss rematch, and skydive through the weak points. How fucking cool is that? Sure, a boss fight that tests your skill with combat mechanics in the game is satisfying, but I just skydive through a gigantic ice centipede, what are you on? All of this set to the best piece of music in Tears of the Kingdom. When the Rito Village Dragon Roost Island theme kicks in at the last phase, it's genuinely mind-blowing, and as this was my first boss in Tears of the Kingdom, I was grinning ear to ear. Zelda is back, baby, and better than ever. And that's without mentioning the second phase that brings tornadoes and teleportation into the mix, all the while Chulin is trying to help you out, and ugh, it's so damn good. This is classic Zelda at its finest, but it doesn't hold a candle to the best fight in the game, which is... When I went into Tears of the Kingdom, I was worried. After all, we'd just had an entire game of fighting weird Ganon-based bosses, and the final boss of Breath of the Wild was alright. So leave it to Nintendo to absolutely alleviate my worries and set the scene. From the moment you fought tooth and nail through the depths of Hyrule Castle, passing by the tutorial area and dropping into the Gloom's Nest, fighting your way through hordes of monsters with the sages until you enter the Inner Sanctum and meet your foe, we get to see Ganondorf rehydrate looking absolutely stunning. Wish he wasn't evil because damn he looks good, thank you Pride Month. His battle is reminiscent initially of the Phantom Ganon fights as he wields the same weapons, but now he has Matt Mercer's deep voice. Facing off in a sword fight against the man, the myth, the legend himself was already enough for an exciting experience. We haven't really had that since Twilight Princess after all. But then he powers up, gaining that Demise hair, and then his health bar just doesn't stop rising. I was expecting it to go off screen. The Zelda team have such a sense of humor, it was a great moment. And suddenly, it's like the Phantom Ganon fight, and you're surrounded by clones until one by one your sages trickle in, helping you battle back. This is what I wanted from the Phantom Ganon fight, your allies talking with you as you guys fight to the bitter end. But perhaps the most thrilling moment of the fight for me, and the reason why it's my favorite in Tears of the Kingdom, is that once Demon King Ganondorf hits half health and the sages are tossed aside, you begin to fight, and then he perfect dodges. And suddenly, instead of Dead Man's volley like in the old games, you're trying to one-up each other with Dead Man's perfect dodges so you can flurry rush him. There is something so exciting about a boss that can utilize your special skill set back against you. It's the ultimate test, and you know what? I died to this boss once because I was not prepared. The only thing I'd say I didn't like was that he inflicted gloom when he hit you, forcing you to play perfect to avoid losing all your hearts, but that's so minor in the face of what could be the best Ganondorf fight in the franchise. Recency bias aside, what a way to pay off the long-standing rivalry between Link and Ganondorf, leading into that Demon Dragon fight and that amazing final sequence. Bravo, brava, bravissima, Zelda team. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm afraid I will be away through July and August, so I don't have any more time to record any Zelda content right now, but once I'm back, I'll be going through the series from the first game forwards and ranking the bosses and dungeons as I go, so please look forward to that. I'm a lifelong Zelda fan, and I look forward to doing that for you. Be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can see weekly content every Wednesday. I currently focus on Soulsborne stuff, so if that interests you, hi. My socials are on screen now. Feel free to follow where you feel comfortable. I recommend my Twitter. A massive shout out to my Patreons over on Patreon. My patrons over on Patreon. I always get that wrong. And I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.